Hello everyone, welcome to Driving Loyalty in Online Casinos, our latest webinar with DeltaDNA. The real money gaming industry has been under the spotlight in the media recently, and regulators are starting to show their teeth to advance consumer protection. So the time is right for operators to take the initiative and drive a more player-first agenda through their businesses. The gaming sector is traditionally focused on bonus acquisition marketing to drive profits, but this model is broken. Now the battle for customer loyalty has moved on to retention and lifetime value, and this requires a new way of thinking about the relationship with players. Many online gaming environments are intimidating for new players, but help is at hand. Working with the most successful mobile gaming publishers in the world, DeltaDNA has built up best practices combining gamification and real-time personalisation to foster greater online engagement. In this webinar, Chief Executive of DeltaDNA, Mark Robinson, will share his ample experience of design and player management to help you make your apps and websites build loyalty and lifetime value throughout the player lifecycle. Please feel free to submit your questions throughout the webinar. I'll be putting them to Mark later in the session. In the meantime, over to Mark.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. Thank you for spending time with us in this busy week before Christmas. As many of you who have heard our stuff before from DeltaDNA will know, we're exceptionally keen on a player-first approach to managing online environments. We've talked previously about real-time engagement, analytics driving customer and player understanding, and gamification techniques. And in this session, what we want to do is go a little bit deeper and explore some aspects of specifically the social casino sector that we think might be interesting and have direct applications to RMG, and certainly give food for thought in terms of how real money gaming environments can be augmented with gamification techniques and ways of managing players online and real time in these what are quite complex environments. I think the context for this is that obviously the real money gaming industry is under scrutiny, especially the last sort of 6-12 months from government and regulators. Quite a lot of activity in terms of governance and taking care of the consumer. In that context, then the main RMG brands and the players in the industry need to really be on the front foot in terms of how the players are managed within the environment. That takes some data collection and also intelligence in terms of the interaction with the players. That is a significant challenge, but also an opportunity. Also, part of the context here is that acquisition marketing is pretty broken. The bonus schemes in terms of driving new players into the environments are pretty challenging in terms of the return on that investment from the company's point of view. But also, it's not a great experience if we're being honest with ourselves from the player's point of view. Oftentimes, the bonuses can seem out of reach. There's quite a lot of rules and hurdles to jump through to unlock the bonuses that are on offer. So that means that attention and marketing spend is being driven much more effectively into churn prevention, into player engagement, and also into optimizing lifetime value. And this is where DeltaDNA comes into play. Really focusing on optimizing and maximizing the benefit of the players as they make their way through the game environment and the player life cycle. Work that we've done across real money gaming proves that this really does pay off in terms of adding significantly to lifetime value. And this is done within the context that, if we're also being honest, all the games are the same, and quite a lot of the current player communications is driven through bulk email. And we know that email is a less responsive channel than perhaps push notification on mobile, but definitely real-time in-app messaging. So with those concerns and with those challenges and with those threats come opportunities. And really one of the things that we want to carry through today's presentation is to make sure that as we think about the opportunities for gamification and real-time personalization of websites and apps, we're also thinking about the player-first approach and balancing player loyalty and player management with some of the more rounded aspects of protecting consumers, including problem gambling and also fraud. And all of these things lie within the remit of this approach. So let's compare a real money gaming environment with a social casino environment, just to draw some distinctions between the two. Here we have one example of a real money gaming example of environment. It's pretty traditional. It'll be familiar to most people on the webinar. Looking at this with a fresh pair of eyes, some things jump out. For example, why so many tabs? It's a pretty busy environment. A lot of pictures, but actually it's not very interactive. You know, as a way of you know, first impressions count. You know, is this really doing the best job for novice players? What would a novice player click on first to get progress here? Certainly, it's not that obvious. The actual game links are tiny. There is a search function which is a little bit of an admission that there's lots of content in there that isn't surfaced, and so one of the things that we do well, I think, at DeltaDNA is look at these environments with fresh eyes, with the eyes of novice players, and really start to ask, you know, quite difficult questions of what the environment is trying to do, but also keep in mind that, you know, all players are different, and you want people to have a differentiated experience across the spectrum of novice to expert players. And this is one of the key points of gamification. The first session really does matter, and understanding in that first session whether you've got an expert player or you've got a novice player and what sort of outcomes you want from that first session is very much the focus of a lot of our work in real money gaming. Contrast that to a typical example online social casino, very different environment. Apart from the Christmassy theme here, it's pretty clear what you want to click on to get to the games. There isn't a lot apart from, you know, attractive illustration. It's a fairly simple set of activities for new players. You get to see your balance and your VIP status are clearly marked at the top and consistent. There aren't any tabs, and what you're able to do is to get the player journey started quickly. It's a real threat in RMG, novice players dwelling in the lobby and being unsure and indistinct in terms of what they're expected to do. This really lays it out nice and cleanly, very directly, so that the players have got a sense of progress and actually know what is expected of them. And you know, we see a merging of real money gaming environments and social casino environments, and I think that this now will accelerate to really learn the lessons that the social casino guys have been developing in terms of best practice over the last few years. And certainly our work at DeltaDNA has shown really good uplift in terms of first session engagement and return sessions from this sort of redesign and fresh approach. So let's backtrack and talk a little bit about the three pillars of online experiences. You know, DeltaDNA has been working in mobile gaming environments for 6 years, you know, and it's been dramatic, the improvement in the environments over those 6 years. I think we're still halfway through a 10, 15-year transformation, so we're certainly not there yet, but compared to some of the online environments, even 3, 4 years ago, we are making dramatic improvements. And really the success is driven by 3 main activities. Best practice gamification mechanics in the design, making sure that you have the ability to interact with the players in an intelligent way through different mechanics. Largely they have come from mobile free-to-play industry. We'll talk a little bit later about the powerful economics that drives forward those guys' player management. But underpinning those design mechanics are also a real clear understanding of the different player experiences and recognizing that one size fits all doesn't work anymore. You have different segments of players all wanting different experiences. And then to actively use that information to manage the player life cycle, building in multiple channel approaches, including in-app and on-website messaging with push notification, SMS, email, but importantly, making sure that your messaging is consistent across all of those channels. So really unleashing the creativity of the marketing team to interact with the players in an intelligent way and using data to drive that creativity and target those player interactions. And why is this important? Just to talk a little bit about DeltaDNA and our background and our approach. We see us helping our clients navigate the difficult player journey between anxiety on the one hand and boredom on the other. When you have a new player start with your app or your website, novice players can tend to feel a little bit overwhelmed. They can tend to be uncertain what they want to do, unsure of the environment. And many novice players leave because of that level of anxiety, uncertainty in the environment. So the best thing that gamification techniques can do is reassure the player, give them simple tasks, give them a sense of achievement, and make sure that they leave that first session wanting to come back. On the other hand, and at the other extreme, we've got expert players coming into the same environment. They know exactly what they want. They know what slot machines they want to interact with, or what table games they like to use, or sports betting, and they need to go straight to that destination and get a very immediate and direct response from the gaming environment. That's 2 very contrasting things, but that is something that gamification can address. And with active player management, you can start to personalize the environment for those both those extreme cases. You can also think about the data supporting player understanding in terms of their competency, their momentum, whether they're aggressive or cautious. What is the mix of games that they enjoy? Do they focus on one particular game? Do they focus on one particular vertical or play across the verticals? Do they have a favorite slots machine? All of this data is highly important in shaping the player engagement. And there are different interventions at each part of the player life cycle. So first-time user experience is vital, and if gamification is going to pay off, it's got to work right from the get-go. It's got to work right from the first session. That's where the biggest impact will have, because that sets the scene for intelligent messaging through the course of the player life cycle. And as I said before, first impressions are absolutely vital so that you get loyalty built in and players feel like they're on the receiving end of an intelligent communication. The DeltaDNA platform, just to dwell on that for a second before we move into the world of social casino more directly. We collect real-time and batch data directly from the websites and apps. We build a single view of the player from operator data and also platform supplier data. We have a bunch of predictive modeling, microsegmentation, data mining tools that allow users to interact with the data and to build up campaigns. So first session churn campaigns, VIP growth campaigns. Over the course of using the tool, our clients build many tens of campaigns to intervene in real time at different parts of the player lifecycle, but also giving the marketers, as well as giving the marketers the ability to interact with the players, giving the analytics guys deep dive ability to understand player behaviors and experiences, and broaden that out to the marketing team, the product team, to really build a better experience and to drive forward not only CRM but product development as well. It's really interesting how more and more we're having discussions about skill-based games, and how the world of mobile gaming in general and social casino and real money gaming come together, where, for example, slot machines can be wrapped in a metagame to provide other aspects of engagement and other aspects of player lifecycle management that perhaps aren't available within the sort of traditional real money gaming environments. So having figured out different interventions and campaigns and player behaviors, then, as I said before, unleashing that across multi-channel marketing. The point here is to actually be able to optimize and test and learn as we go along. So each campaign will have an impact, and it's possible, obviously, to evaluate campaigns on an individual basis. A little bit more difficult, but something that we've been working hard on the last year in DeltaDNA is to ensure that as the campaign density ramps up, that you're understanding the impact of the whole communications program. So understanding that what the balance is like for different players in terms of their consumption of messages, who is under messaged, who's potentially over messaged, and making sure that the communication program as a whole works well. We, when our clients start to rapidly A/B test and experiment their environment, we know that that is the true path to pure optimization, and that's when the engagement and value metrics really start to become unleashed. So let's spend the last part of the presentation talking specifically about some of the lessons that we see in social casino that are directly applicable to real money gaming. Just a little bit of context and background. Social casino, it's a tough economy. Players can put money into the system. They can't get money out of the system. But actually, these games are free to play. A small proportion of the customer base does part with money for the experience. First session retention is tough. It can be that half or 60% of the players don't come back, and therefore there's a small percentage of spenders and some income available from consumption of ads with the non-spenders. But it's a really tough environment. However, free-to-play publishers have got really good at online engagement. They know that to make these games profitable, it's not good enough to just manage what are called the whale players, the really high-value players. It's important to ensure that, for example, the first conversion to paying players is very timely and very appropriate, and a great offer, very generous. It's very important not to ask for money too soon in the relationship. It's also important for non-spenders to put some income into the system by consuming ads, and also to make sure that the VIPs aren't, totally the reliance on the economy, is to make sure that spenders have the ability to repeat their spend at least 3 times. So these sorts of benchmark rules are what drive a lot of our player management working with our social casino clients. Not directly related to RMG in terms of the economy, obviously, and perhaps a different demographic, but definitely some of the mechanics in here do translate to RMG. And maybe we'll start off by saying what social casino mechanics are not. It's not just meant for purely casual games. Some of these games can be pretty intense and demanding in terms of people's time. And it doesn't just mean chat rooms and friendly connections and network groups within games. There are a lot more aspects to gamification mechanics and social casino than just that sort of networking dynamic. But some of this does require a cultural mind shift. It definitely requires an adjustment to the way that environments are managed and built. And we work with our clients over a considerable time period to make phased improvements to environments. And this is something that we feel very strongly should be built into the culture of how RMG businesses go about their player management. It should be built from the bottom up, and it does require a rethinking in terms of approach to how online environments are developed. So let's talk a little bit about the specific mechanics. We'll go in and give examples of each of these mechanics in the next few slides. So what I'll do is I'll just jump in now and talk a little bit about each one in turn. So let's talk about first impressions, the UIX and the lobby. Some golden rules here. Don't clutter the lobby. Don't make it intimidating. Tell your players what you expect them to achieve. Be clear. No room for subtlety here. Get them to understand the environment, and you want them leaving the first session with some sense of achievement. This takes a degree of thinking and careful consideration. We often challenge our RMG clients and also our mobile games clients to look at their initial player experience with fresh eyes, try and look at it as a novice player and see, are things that you take for granted and think are obvious, are they actually that obvious? And sometimes you'll come back with some surprising considerations. So, quite often in RMG lobbies, we see novices clicking randomly and without direction. They leave the session without a sense of achievement. And here's one example specifically on the right-hand side of where we've got a nice clean interface. We have got a sense of direction, and we've got a clear instruction to players about how they can interact with the game. Now, obviously this is a very specific use case, but this does directly translate to fresh thinking about RMG lobbies, especially thinking about recommended games for specific players and building up as we go through the player life cycle, more precision in those recommendations as we go forward. Progression is a very key human instinct and a key sort of platform in terms of the gamification armory. Your players are on a journey, so giving players a sense of that linear progression, showing them what that progression is achieving is important. And in this example, we see shields are acting as procession goals. So as players get through different levels, then that unlocks increased levels of bonuses and increased loyalty levels. Now, this is where skill-based gaming and real money come together, perhaps in a very neat way. A meta game surrounding traditional casino games can give an extra dimension to certain types of players to build a story in and amongst what are more traditional slot machines. And these meta game genres, I think there's a big opportunity to expand the meta game genre games to different profiles of players. And this is an interesting opportunity for RMG to broaden the profile of gamers. So slots can be wrapped within different types of mobile game genres, tower defense, puzzle games, saga games, anything really in terms of addressing a particular demographic profile. That will start to build real resonance with the consumer base, dependent on that particular genre matching with a player profile. Leagues and competitions are important, dynamic. You can matchmake players into leagues based on similar skills and similar outcomes. Progress can be based on weekly or daily performance. Your promotion and relegation happens based on achieving certain targets. And linked to that sort of promotion, your tickets can be generated that in a sort of a random style give various rewards to players that sit alongside the traditional RMG gameplay. League positions are very important to people, and even if players don't want to be first, they definitely don't want to be last. And so this dynamic is a powerful one that is used a lot in mobile gaming and is probably underused in real money gaming in certain aspects of particular verticals. Clubs is also another important dynamic. This is where we have a little bit of competition, but much more on the collaboration side, where you're encouraging players to interact with each other. This allows clubs to be rewarded together with boosters and other loyalty schemes. It encourages players to bond in terms of their joint goals, and to regularly check packs. So this is a great way of appointment setting, running tournaments at specific on specific days and specific times, and giving another dimension to the interaction with the individual players. The clan's quite a sort of mobile gaming term, but if we think about it as groups and people working together, one of the concepts here could be time-limited offers and goals set to particular groups of players to make it competitive. People can include themselves into groups. They can create a group with their friends. Also, an internal leaderboard can build competition within the group as well as competition across the groups. And this is one of the most important gamification mechanics that sits alongside the individual traditional gameplay, that acts as a very strong motivator for players to not even if they're playing on their own behalf, but feel part of a team and get that more connected collaboration dynamic working well. Collection, this is a little bit less used in RMG, but is a very strong dynamic in social casino, where as players complete tasks and undertake activities, they get rewarded with vanity items. Part of this is about bragging rights and status symbols. If those vanity items are clearly on view within player profiles or within the gameplay. And this also, for certain types of players, does build engagement and does build an extra dimension to that competitive drive. Another aspect of collection is collaboration. The previous example was much more on an individualistic basis. This is much more to do with collaboration and sharing cards to complete sets to unlock loyalty rewards. Maybe not an exact fit for RMG, but you could imagine a world where that sort of collaboration sat beside the gameplay and resulted in random rewards, sharing of rewards, and therefore enhancing the loyalty. It also could be used to encourage players to play across verticals, making the side game a different game, perhaps from the one the individual player normally plays. We've talked a little bit about player profiles. Actually, a lot of this is about sharing information with other players, understanding relevant stats and achievements, telling players how these achievements can be earned, and making sure that information is freely available when a player is actually in the game, playing at the table, or actually out of the game within some other networking groups and loyalty schemes. And it just gives a little bit more social cohesion to the playing experience, which is important for certain types of players. The last one we'll talk about is social interaction, and here's an example from an award-winning game called Golf Clash. Not very related to RMG, but what we've seen with games like this is that adding the ability for players to send each other preset messages and emotes is really enhancing the player journey and building that interaction. So you get direct feedback on your golf shot, whether it's good or not so good in my case. And that is a much more powerful way of interacting than a traditional chat dialogue box or other ways of interacting with players. This is very easy, it's very highly adopted, and we've seen stats in our sort of platform data where 95% of players use this type of messaging if available. So there's another great way of building a dialogue and therefore building engagement with players. So lots of things to think about. Some of these are obviously not insignificant development activities. What we say when we're working with our clients is that this is a journey and it's a phased approach. There's certainly some quick wins that can be done in terms of improving gamification from a standing start, but actually this is something that should be planned out over a number of phases. It should certainly be done on a test and learn basis, collecting the data and getting the feedback from the players in the online environments. And you're moving this sort of test and learn ability to the heart of how the products are developed. So, it is an investment from the operator and operator side, but actually, we've proven over the last couple of years that this approach does dramatically change the dynamic with the players. It also enhances your brand in terms of the players, as I said before, feeling on the end of an intelligent relationship. And really, this player-first approach, we see the brands that really embrace this are gaining strides in what is obviously a very competitive landscape. So thank you for listening. I hope that was useful and interesting, and I'm happy to take a couple of questions if there are any before we finish up.
Thanks so much, Mark. It was very interesting. Thank you very much for going through all of that. We've got a couple of questions. There's one here which I'll put to you first, and then I've got a few as well that I'd like to ask. But we've been asked sort of for some examples of best-in-class social casino apps. Do you have some thoughts on where these techniques have been used sort of to best effect that can kind of act as a bit of inspiration for those listening?
Sure. I mean, I think that what we would say is that there are aspects of different operators that certainly can learn from. There's obviously there's never anything that's perfect out there, but some of the guys at Huge, for example, are doing some really neat stuff with gamification. Check them out. And as the market is developing quite quickly, so what we do and what I'd encourage other people to do is to keep an eye on the app stores and to download and play the games in the context of the stuff we've been talking about, because it's really one important way of seeing how the market is moving. We obviously spend a lot of time building best practices and working with our clients to implement this stuff. But because we have thousands of games on our platform, we're able to really see what is working and what's not working and feed that back into the industry.
Yeah, and like you say, kind of looking at them with fresh eyes, I guess, and there's no better way than to kind of go and play a few of them and try and think of it from an outsider's perspective, I suppose, and sort of look for the gaps that you could be improving on. If people get to the stage where they want to kind of start moving in this direction, taking on some of these things that you've just been talking about, I mean, how do people get started in terms of switching away from a sort of, the more common acquisition model to engagement marketing? What do they need to be doing?
So the way that we would suggest when we start working with clients is that we would first and foremost do a gamification evaluation of the environment. We have a framework consultative tool that looks at over 40 different game mechanics and evaluates the client's websites and apps against those best practices, and builds then comparisons to those best practices and a series of prioritized recommendations to really focus in on what aspects of the game design are in good shape to start using for gamification and what needs developing along the way. The second aspect of that is to start collecting data and understand player behaviors, and then map that over the gamification outputs. And then we're into a sort of a set of different phases of environmental design and development combined with sort of marketing CRM activities to move the whole of the sort of the environment management forward.
Okay. And I mean, would acquisition still have a role to play? I mean, would the traditional kind of acquisition model have a role to play alongside this? Or do you think that's really something that people need to kind of shelve, move away from, and think wholly at engagement marketing at this stage?
No, I think acquisition continues to be an important part of the jigsaw. But once there's a clear view of what player management should be deployed to maximize the LTV of different player segments, then the acquisition channels can be sort of queried to see who is driving, which acquisition partners are driving high value players.
Right.
And making sure that the acquisition budget is very focused on where the value lies. I think that really having a clear view of what channels are driving players' loyalty is important. But that's only going to be the case once we're doing a good job on the loyalty and especially the first session.
Yeah, okay. And sort of what technology do people need to think about in terms of moving over to this? That's presumably quite a big part of this transition, and I imagine something that kind of sort of worries people a little bit when they're going into major changes like this. What do they need to be thinking about?
Yeah, it's I mean, partly it's consulting and partly it's technology in our sort of experience. The DeltaDNA platform collects data both directly from the apps and from the websites, but it also can collect data from back-end systems. So getting to a single view of players, most organizations have got to a single view of players in some degree, Whether it's real time or not is a different question. So oftentimes part of the first component of an engagement is to understand data readiness and to start a journey on enhancing data. And that's I think the key thing for us is there's plenty of reasons why you shouldn't do this in terms of it feels quite a big task and quite intimidating. But making small steps at the start and proving the business case is relatively straightforward. Getting some quick wins under your belt, and then that can then encourage the business to take a bigger step in terms of data, CRM, marketing, and also environmental design.
Yeah, I mean it's a big ask, isn't it, to move away from something that's familiar as the kind of acquisition model that the industry's been working with for a long time, and to make that change. But as you say, I suppose sort of incremental steps, right, and like analysing your data and working out kind of where the wins are and demonstrating them is sort of the best way to start.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's small steps to build confidence, but having the courage to use this stuff to differentiate yourself in the marketplace. There are some really compelling reasons to do this now. It is genuinely a boardroom conversation, not just on CRM and in-game, in-app marketing, but also understanding the players much more clearly and in depth from the aspects of not just traditional players and sort of standard players, but also managing problem gambling, exploit, fraud.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask, about those additional benefits, because obviously the industry is under sort of increasing scrutiny. It feels sort of every single day about, other aspects, the kind of less positive aspects that come along with things like this, such problems, gambling and fraud. And I was going to ask, where does this help with those as well? Are there benefits there?
Yeah, the data that we collect in real time certainly unlocks key triggers and key behaviors in terms of problem gambling as well. So, one benefit of our real-time engine is to ensure that alerts can be set up when those sorts of trigger behaviors are seen. And then instead of what has been typically the approach where problem gamblers are invited to self-exclude, the organization can be much more proactive in managing that situation as it arises.
And presumably, in terms of gamification, does that data help inform the way that you design the game and the types of engagement that you're looking for? Because this is a sort of issue as well, isn't it? It's the way that you hold someone's attention and whether that's a negative influence and whether that could contribute to problem behaviors. So presumably having access to all this data will help you to kind of make those decisions as well in game design. Sure.
So one straightforward example of that is understanding how long players are dwelling in the lobby. Generally, people will be dwelling in the lobby because they're unsure what to do, or they're not particularly motivated to do anything. You can imagine that some pertinent and intelligent messaging at that point to direct them towards a good outcome would be very beneficial, and certainly we've seen that work exceptionally well when we've implemented it for our clients.
Okay, and we've got a question just sort of come up now, which is about kind of the extent to which you can test the water. So this is asking, is gamification sort of too big a change for a company that just wants to test the water? Are there ways that people can kind of have a go at this, not necessarily take too much risk to see if it works for them?
Yeah, I would encourage that approach actually, instead of deciding that gamification is going to be implemented in one go. What can be done is focus on the first session, perhaps collect some data and analyze the player's experience in the first session and see who's not coming back.
Mm-hmm.
What are the experiences that those players are having that is leading them not to return? And then, having diagnosed that, setting up some messaging in the lobby to direct players to what is a good machine for them, or a good game. Mm-hmm. And so once you've started going around that cycle, it kind of just continues, because you're always questioning and solving and optimizing. So I mean, that's where I would recommend people starting this journey actually focus on first session churn.
Yeah.
And what are the ways that don't require a complete rebuild of the website or the app to make good improvements in that churn stat?
Yeah. And in terms of kind of for operators, I mean, how do they know that gamification is going to work for them? What's the benefit for those guys?
Well, operators are all about player loyalty. They're all about improving the lifetime value. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of competitive pressure out there. We do know that the more valuable players will shop their bets around different brands. So the biggest benefit here is to improve their share of bet, the share of wallet. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think the big win will happen. There are lots of reasons and blockers why operators wouldn't start on this journey. I think a lot of them have at least considered it, and we're working with the ones that are innovating in this area and doing some exciting things. However, if you are left behind, then you not be surprised to see your share of the VIP market dwindling.
Yeah, and I mean, differentiation is a sort of increasingly commonly used term, it feels, and it feels like gamification is a real way of doing that, isn't it? Because these games, if you're gamifying them, they are going to become very much more individual from the competitors, I would assume, if you've got sort of these little elements being built into them that sort of take them away from the traditional slot games, for example, that we know. I mean, is that an element as well, just differentiating yourself?
Yeah, well, we have to remember that all these games are fundamentally the same, right? So what is the differentiation? The differentiation is the brand. And if with the brand goes an intelligent relationship with the players, then I see that as being the core differentiation for RMG brands going forward. I really do think that the winners in this very competitive world will be the ones that get this stuff done well and done quickly. And I fear for the ones that are sticking to their more traditional ways of doing business. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, we're sort of coming to the end of our hour, but I think sort of it'd be really nice to sum up with kind of what the most important thing is to make this a success, really. As people come away from this webinar and start thinking about how they're going to put some of this into action, what are the most important things they need to be considering to make sure this works for them?
Well, I think just to sort of reiterate the last point, it's to make a start. You could spend a lot of time planning to do this stuff, but actually make the first step. Now, make it a small step, but commit to making that first step and build knowledge within the business as you go. I think there's a few things at play here. There's obviously data and analytics. There's obviously marketing. There is environment design. And it's a hearts and minds thing as well. But the board will be thinking about this stuff and wanting to improve their capability here. And I think that is my overarching comment. Make a start and realize that this is not so much a technical challenge as a cultural way of doing business. So make sure that you're bringing everybody with you through this journey by communicating really well the benefits of it.
All right, Mark, look, thank you so much. It's been really, really interesting hearing from you. Everyone can access these slides after the webinar, so they will go up on the website and they'll be available to everyone. So if you've missed anything or you want to recap, do go and download them from there and kind of revisit Mark's advice. But we'll wrap up for this one. Thanks ever so much, Mark.
Not at all. It's a pleasure.
Thanks very much. Okay, bye.
Bye.